Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about something that I've been deeply immersed in over the last 3 years: how to design a medical education curriculum from scratch that will be better aligned with the current and future needs of patients and the health service. Alongside this, in my vice chair role, I've been involved in extending the college's traditional postgraduate educational portfolio to undergraduate medical students. But I want to start by saying that I've come to the conclusion that we need a completely new approach to the way we prepare our students for their professional lives ahead, if we want them to manage without implosion, both of the NHS and of the profession. So what do I mean by implosion? And what do I mean by a completely new approach? I'll explain why I believe it's important we change our current approach, the changes we need to make, and what new could look like. So let's start with implosion. Many of us in this auditorium know that feeling. One more patient, problem, question, letter, blood result I have to make a decision on, and my head will explode. Our workload has increased hugely, and it's also changed in nature. And of course, this applies to all doctors, not only GPs. We really need to change our approach to avoid burnout. And in fact, this has been something that many others have said in the last couple of days. This new approach is for learning from a holistic generalist base that includes an understanding of people and the world in which we all live. This is going to be necessary to work with our patients and the public as our equal partners to engage them far more in maintaining wellness and preventing illness. It's relevant to both primary and secondary care. And we need this because the NHS, technology, ethics and society have moved on while undergraduate medical education has struggled to keep up. Our scientific training, as indeed our evidence-based medicine, is largely based on one-condition patients. But we're faced every day with patients who simultaneously have poorly controlled diabetes, gout, heart disease, swollen ankles, leg ulcers, hypertension, and renal failure. We need to know how to manage and treat their biomedical conditions, but we also need, more than ever, to be patient-centered, to know when, if, and how to treat them, when to have sensitive discussions about the future, and when to just sit with them and hold their hand. And most importantly, we need to think about ways to help people not to get into these clinical nightmare situations in the first place. I currently work in a deprived Welsh Valleys town. I've been really struck by the number of obese patients I've seen, all with weight-related, serious, insoluble health problems. It's not rocket science to realize that we need to be tackling these lifestyle issues at a much earlier stage than waiting for them to present in the surgery. When I asked some first-year medical students if they'd been surprised about anything in their first GP placements, they said it was the number of patients who'd had more than one thing wrong with them. Welcome to our world. We now have good evidence of the extent of the effect of medical negativity on our students' career choices, particularly for general practice. So we cannot let this damage our enthusiasm for the job, and most importantly, we need to continue to convey this enthusiasm to the doctors of tomorrow. We have to start thinking creatively. We have to, and we are, working out ways to work differently, for example, with new skill mixes in primary care, but we also have to make sure this is reflected in the training the next generation of doctors receive. Otherwise, we're giving them the wrong tools for the job. It's urgent, and we need to do it now. But all is not doom and gloom, and one way forward is to use technology to enable and enhance what we do in the community, rather than use it to carve up the NHS and find ourselves squabbling over who takes which patients in online consultations. Technology can really help us find time-saving ways to perform jobs that are otherwise laborious and unsuited to the human brain, freeing up clinicians to do more complex work that's better suited to their level of ability. What is really exciting is that it can also increase the range and type of jobs we can do to improve services to our patients, which after all is why most of us have become medics in the first place. I've seen research demonstrations of implants, wearables, and monitors in Surrey's 5G living laboratory that will revolutionize care of patients in the community with chronic diseases such as dementia, diabetes, renal problems. Likewise, artificial intelligence and big data mean that we can now interrogate data in a way that was unthinkable before. One of my favorite quotes, if we always do what we always done, we'll always get what we always got. So, with that background, what sort of doctors do we need tomorrow? We need medical leaders who can drive change and deliver up-to-date, caring, integrated, and technologically advanced healthcare for their patients and communities. They should be, A, confident, intellectually curious clinicians with a broad approach that includes community health, wellness, and an understanding of and responsiveness to social needs. B, they should value co-production with patients to ensure their well-being is as important as diagnosing and managing disease. And C, they need to be able to use communication technology intelligently to enhance the services they offer patients and to keep patients safely close to or at home for as long as possible. So in order to get this new type of doctor, what changes do we need to make to their learning? First, I believe we need to reset the reductionist biological model of human illness and the quasi-colonial approach to clinical placement teaching that sees secondary care placements as taking precedence and being remunerated more highly than primary care placements. This sends out a terrible message as to how we value primary care. Secondly, we must understand how to use the hidden curriculum to our advantage. The power of role models is underused in my view. Senior academics and our medical school deans, as leaders and role models, must be center stage, demonstrating respect for all medical specialties, including general practice, what putting patients first really means, and giving students a realistic and not an ivory tower perspective of the medical world. Third, we must immerse students in authentic health and social care settings from day one and make them feel useful and valued in order to retain their desire to help tomorrow's patients and tomorrow's society. Students need to see how the things they learn on campus relate to real life issues and that there often aren't black and white solutions to health problems. They need to be introduced to the complexities of working in social and healthcare teams from day one, not as a box-ticking exercise lost in the bowels of the curriculum. Fourth, we need to introduce and develop new and innovative content, such as the concept of One Health, which takes a broad view of the factors that influence health and well-being from ecology and environment down to community cohesion and interpersonal relationships. Fifth, we need to develop new approaches to learning, such as adaptive education, an approach that gives more individualized learning experience, better tailored to the type of learning and speed of learning of students as individual learners. A rote learning, restrictive and persistent summative assessment system drives all spirit of inquiry out of learning and engenders student survival behavior that just strives to get past the next assessment. And those of us who design and deliver medical education are the ones responsible for this, and it needs to stop. We must integrate theory with its clinical relevance, enabling students to understand why knowing certain things are important and ruthlessly discard less important information that may never be useful to them. Learning to use carefully defined and high-quality history-taking and examination methods, allied with an understanding of critical reasoning, helps students understand what they're seeing at presentation, and an evidence-based approach to diagnosis and management rather than a blunderbuss attempt to check everything and hope a diagnosis falls out of the results. And finally, we need to rethink our selection methodology, picking future doctors not for their academic brilliance, but on personal qualities, common sense, problem-solving skills, and desire to serve communities. We need to ensure inclusivity, to be sure we're developing a generation of doctors who understand people and the world in which we all live. Our students are the creme de la creme of our youngsters, the future of our profession, and they can take this complexity and intellectual challenge from the start if it is properly, carefully, and compassionately explained and taught. So, come with me on this journey of construction. If, like me, you were given a blank sheet of paper, where would you start? I wanted a coherency in the learning journey so that students, their teachers, and the public could easily see how they were developing into the doctors they were going to become. Keeping patients at the heart of learning was key to the whole program. Starting with the mission statement for the program, I then derived its values and educational principles. Those then governed the curriculum design. Every time I wondered if or how to incorporate something, I returned to the values and educational principles as my benchmark. Linking biomedical science with clinical practice was a key aspect of the horizontal integration that many other medical schools have implemented. Integrating this with the relevant clinical and consulting skills and the opportunity to concurrently meet patients from year one with conditions related to the area of learning was something I developed at Cardiff and brought with me to Surrey. None of it was rocket science, just trying to be logical, use educational best practice, and put together something a student would find useful, interesting, and inspiring, while still enabling a clear progression of learning, achieving the GMC learning outcomes. Now, the fun bit was adding the unique features I've described: the One Health agenda, digital and communications technology, leadership and management training, longitudinal community involvement, patient safety, and quality improvement. These came as vertical themes threading through each year of the course, with each year building on what had already been learned. Linking the curriculum education objectives with the assessment program allowed me to identify the pinch points in the program, where it was essential to show the student had reached a sufficient standard to progress. These then became the only summative assessment points, and the assessment burden relative to other medical school programs was considerably reduced. Regular, low-key formative assessments meant that students would receive regular, individualized feedback on their learning and progress, and remediation could be offered early to those who were found to be struggling. So, how does this curriculum design differ from existing curricula in other medical schools? Well, in many ways, it doesn't. I was building on the shoulders of giants. However, it couldn't be so wacky that the GMC would want us to dump it. What made it special was being able to start afresh. Nothing was sacrosanct. I could question everything that is currently in a traditional medical curriculum. And I found new partners keen to contribute to a medical curriculum. Surrey Business School, the School of Engineering, and the Vet School all wanted to help build relevant parts of the new curriculum because they could see why it was needed. In fact, researchers in engineering technology told me how much they badly need informed medics to help them determine what is needed so that they can then design, test, and produce it. And they also need informed medics to use them, and we need to train them. The local NHS across primary and secondary care was superb, excited to contribute to a new curriculum, freely giving their time to rethink what was essential in their disciplines for new graduates to know. A community-facing curriculum naturally lends itself to working with our patients and communities, and this is what I wanted to be a major aspect of the new approach. Unless we can encourage the populations we care for into taking a proactive approach to managing their own health, we will be overcome by a tide of conditions that people feel can only be managed by medications and procedures, feeding into the overdiagnosis and over-medicalization issues that concern so many of us today. However, unless we learn how communities function, how teams work and are led, how to interact and engage with people in real life, but cannot develop a workable vision of co-production with patients. As GPs, we learn this with experience, but it doesn't feature in medical student curricula. I believe students should be in a learning environment where the local backyard social and medical landscape is used to stimulate their learning, their thinking about the world, and their plans for their future lives as professionals. For example, where I work, the social history of the South Wales valleys over the past 200 years is key to the current social deprivation and concomitant high prevalence of chronic disease and lower life expectancy. So I built in the following essentials to give students a head start in understanding communities. Firstly, early clinical practice, which would mostly take place in community settings, including other community services and third sector organizations. Secondly, seeing clinical leadership in action. Hearing clinical leaders speak about what inspires them can be unforgettable experiences for students. There were also opportunities to see at close hand how innovative projects, new skill mixes, and use of technology are bringing new services to patients. Thirdly, community service projects. Students would join an existing project in health or social care and engage with it for the whole duration of their program, reporting on what they were learning and integrating this with the on-campus curriculum. For example, leadership and team working, and social and psychological aspects of medicine and public health, and much more. Fourthly, opportunities to develop sustained professional relationships with patients over time and assumed some supervised responsibility for their care. This would include outreach health education, inviting the general public into the medical school, as well as longitudinal placements that gave students time to see the natural history of patient journeys, which I know many other medical schools are also doing. The principle of allowing students to practice their clinical skills in authentic settings as part of the clinical team as soon as they were proficient was also important. And finally, the representation of patients and the public in the main medical school committees. Working at a senior level in a cutting-edge university has had its challenges, as I've had to learn new skills in financial budgets, writing business cases and risk profiles, marketing, both in the UK and internationally, designing staffing structures and identifying and developing good relationships with important others in the NHS, county council, and in local and national politics. But perhaps the greatest challenge was changing the mindset of a university that was prepared to invest many millions of pounds in medical education, but was still fixated on research academic achievement. Fulfilling the requirements of the NHS and the public, who are the paymasters after all, sometimes came a poor second in our discussions at University Executive Board. Their initial approach was one of academic superiority and a belief that general practice and generalism was a dumbing down of medicine. Universities are driven by the need to create academically excellent medics who would lead research and innovation and bring credit to the institution. And they don't usually see GPs as part of this, although we all know that they can be and that they are. It's taken some resilience to stand my ground and to point this out, but also that higher education institutions need to take some social responsibility for their roles in ensuring that their graduates also serve NHS workforce needs and the health of the nation. And I know that Surrey is not alone. I wish I could tell you that everything went to plan and that the new medical school in Surrey is well underway. But unfortunately, the government's agenda for allocating medical school places to under-doctored areas put the Surrey curriculum on hold. But I've learnt a lot from the experience and I've really enjoyed it. And it really shouldn't stop other universities and medical schools from building on some of these ideas and suggestions. And I'd be really happy to help. So let me turn now to the new direction the RCGP has been taking alongside all of this in promoting undergraduate general practice teaching as a fulfilling and intellectually satisfying career to medical students. Since the appointment of Chris Bull as our student engagement manager in 2016, we've contributed to the development of GP societies in every UK medical school and supported these societies with ideas, resources, and speakers. We've worked in partnership with HEE and Leeds Medical School to develop a toolkit for work experience for school students applying to medicine, and develop workshops for school and medical students at our annual conferences. They've been going alongside our conference yesterday and today, and at Christmas at the college. And together with Professors Joe Rosenthal and Alex Harding, and the heads of teachers at the Society for Academic Primary Care, we've produced a guide to general practice teaching, which is being launched at this conference. You can find it on our RCGP stand and on our website. We're working with the Society for Academic Primary Care and the BMA to push for a standardized and fair payment to undergraduate GP tutors, commensurate with secondary care. And our latest venture is to approach the foundation schools across the UK so that we can actively promote general practice as a career in these early career years as well. One of the most telling pieces of evidence I want to leave you with has come from our Destination GP survey of medical students across the UK. We now know that 81% of the 3,000 students surveyed said that GPs on their placements had most influenced their positive perceptions of general practice. This is a massive vote of confidence in all of you, an outcome you can be truly proud of. It demonstrates to me how important you all are to the successful renewal of our profession, and how important it is that we continue to demonstrate day by day, week by week, the true meaning of cum scientia caritas. Thank you for listening.